Lyra Hargrove knelt in the shadow of the Aetheris cliffs, the sharp, bitter wind cutting through her tactical gear. Her eyes scanned the alien landscape through her helmet's heads-up display, the towering, jagged rocks and the dark sky above reflecting the cold indifference of the world. The hum of her team's equipment was the only sound that filled her ears. They were alone here, a speck of human defiance against the relentless waves of alien invaders. Status? Lyra's voice was low, almost a whisper, but each word carried the weight of command. Silent, Sergeant Rook responded, his voice barely audible. No signs of movement. But they're here. I can feel it. Lyra's lips curled into a faint smile beneath her helmet. Rook was a seasoned soldier, loyal to the core. But his intuition, though invaluable, was often clouded by instinct. He didn't understand that they weren't just facing enemies, they were facing a belief, an entire philosophy of power. The Xy'rak had a rigid view of strength. Conquer or be conquered. They didn't understand the concept of being underdog. And the problem with that? They underestimated humanity. Lyra crouched lower, adjusting her sniper rifle. The weapon hummed with the quiet promise of precision, a tool not just for death, but for survival. She'd fought on countless battlefields, but this planet, Aetheris, it was something different. Harsh, unyielding, yet undeniably strategic. Aetheris wasn't just an outpost. It was a piece of the puzzle. A piece she was ready to protect. Rook, take point, she ordered, her eyes still fixed on the horizon. I'll cover you. Rook nodded, moving swiftly and silently, his heavy boots barely leaving a trace on the cracked earth. Behind him, the rest of the squad followed, each of them honed for a single purpose, stopping the alien threat before it could claim Aetheris. As Lyra monitored their movements through her HUD, she couldn't help but think about the invaders they were facing. The Xy'rak, a race of towering insectoid creatures, had once believed that strength alone could bend the galaxy to their will. But strength wasn't enough. They hadn't counted on humanity's spirit. The first sign of danger came not with a roar or a clash, but with a whisper. The ground beneath them shifted, and the low rumble echoed through the valley. Lyra's hand instinctively gripped the stock of her rifle. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to tell her everything she needed to know. Ambush. Lyra snapped into her comms. Get down, now. Without hesitation, the squad dove to the ground, each member instinctively finding cover behind rocks or the sparse outcroppings of the landscape. Lyra's eyes darted across the terrain, searching for the threat. That's when she saw them. A shadow flickered at the edge of her sight, and then, with terrifying speed, a Xy'rak war party emerged from their hiding spots. The aliens were fast, too fast, and they moved like a well-oiled machine, despite the harsh conditions. They were closing in. They were coordinated. Focus fire, squad, Lyra commanded, her voice sharp and steady. Don't engage until they get within range. Her squad responded immediately, their synchronized movements displaying the sharpness of well-trained warriors. But Lyra knew something the others didn't. The Xy'rak might be efficient, but their arrogance would be their downfall. They believed themselves untouchable. The first shot rang out from Lyra's rifle, a burst of concentrated energy that struck one of the Xy'rak in the chest. The creature staggered back, smoke rising from the burn wound. The squad opened fire immediately, a hail of bullets and energy rounds that shattered the silence and turned the landscape into chaos. But the aliens were relentless. For every one they took down, two more seemed to take their place. Lyra's heart beat faster, but her mind stayed calm. This wasn't a fight about firepower, it was a fight about tactics. And Lyra had the upper hand. Form up on me, she shouted, gesturing for her squad to regroup. They did so swiftly, falling into a defensive perimeter around her. Lyra adjusted her rifle, aiming carefully. Her crosshairs locked onto another target, an alien commander standing behind a barricade of rocks. The Xy'rak leader raised his weapon, taking aim. A fatal mistake. Lyra squeezed the trigger. The shot was precise, hitting the alien commander square in the head. The creature crumpled to the ground, its weapon falling uselessly to the dirt. For a moment, there was silence. But only for a moment. "Keep moving," Lyra barked. "Don't give them time to regroup." Her team advanced, and they moved fast, methodical. Every move was calculated. Lyra's mind worked at a pace that seemed almost inhuman. Every scenario played out in her head, every potential move the Xy'rak might make, and every response she would need to give. "Lyra, we're—" Rook's voice cut off mid-sentence, replaced by static. The signal was down. She knew what that meant. "Rook!" Lyra shouted, trying to reach him, but her comms were dead. The ground beneath them began to shake again, this time more violently. Lyra's eyes snapped toward the ridge. From above, a second wave of Xy'rak soldiers descended, dropping from cloaked ships hidden in the upper atmosphere. Their shimmering forms moved with terrifying precision, cutting off any escape routes. It was a trap. Lyra's fingers tightened around her rifle, but a sudden realization hit her. They were being drawn in. The aliens weren't just attacking, they were testing them. And the Xy'rak had one thing that they hadn't yet used, their belief in their own superiority. She could feel it, the unspoken challenge. They thought the humans were weak. That belief would be their undoing. "Squad, on me," Lyra commanded. "We push back, now. No more running." With a sudden burst of speed, she sprinted forward, her team following suit. The Xy'rak were closing in from all sides, but Lyra's mind was clear, focused. She would make them see, not just that they could lose, but that they would lose. The battle had only just begun, but Lyra had already won the most important fight, the fight for humanity's future. And as her squad followed her into the heart of the battle, Lyra felt a surge of pride. The Xy'rak would learn the true meaning of power. Not through strength, but through resilience. The fight for Aetheris was far from over. The sun had long since set on Aetheris, leaving the jagged mountains bathed in a cold, eerie twilight. The smell of burned rock and alien blood lingered in the air as Lyra Hargrove crouched behind the outcrop, her eyes scanning the horizon. The sounds of distant explosions and sporadic gunfire echoed across the valley, but Lyra knew the worst was yet to come. The Xy'rak didn't retreat, they regrouped. And that's exactly what they were doing now. She tapped her helmet, cycling through the tactical display. Rook and the others had fallen back to the secondary defense point, a craggy ledge that overlooked the canyon below. They had inflicted significant damage on the first wave of invaders, but the situation was far from over. The Xy'rak would not stop until Aetheris was under their control. "Rook, report," Lyra ordered over the comms. The voice that came through was gruff, distorted by static. "We've got multiple squads advancing. They've learned from their mistakes. We're gonna need more than tactics this time. They're too damn many." Lyra's gaze sharpened, eyes narrowing. She couldn't afford panic. The Xy'rak had the numbers, the firepower, and the arrogance to believe that nothing could stop them. But they hadn't counted on the human spirit. Not yet. "Set up a perimeter around the ridge," Lyra instructed. "No one gets past you. We're going to hit them hard, fast, and from unexpected angles." She felt the weight of responsibility settle over her. The lives of her team rested on her decision-making, but worse, the fate of Aetheris hung in the balance. The planet wasn't just an outpost. It was a strategic nexus, vital for humanity's expansion in the galaxy. And if the Xy'rak took it, everything they had worked for would crumble. As she prepared for the next assault, Lyra's thoughts drifted briefly to Earth. The images of green fields, the smell of fresh rain, a contrast so sharp it nearly cut through her focus. Earth was the cradle of humanity's resilience. It was where she had trained, where she had learned that victory wasn't just about firepower. It was about adaptability. Her squad trusted her, followed her without question. They had no idea the extent to which the Xy'rak underestimated them. It was time to show the invaders what humans could do when pushed to their limits. The first explosion rattled the ground beneath her feet. The Xy'rak had initiated their assault, again. "Brace yourself," Lyra muttered to herself, pushing forward. From the ridge, the Xy'rak were visible now, charging toward her position. They moved with a fluid, terrifying efficiency. But Lyra had a plan. She wasn't going to give them the direct confrontation they expected. "Now, squad," she yelled, tapping into the comms system to broadcast her orders. A series of synchronized explosions erupted along the canyon walls, sending clouds of dust and debris flying. The Xy'rak flinched, momentarily disoriented. It was the perfect diversion. Her squad moved swiftly, flanking from the left and right, taking advantage of the disarray to pick off the aliens one by one. "Focus on their leaders," Lyra shouted as she crawled from her cover, her rifle aimed at the nearest alien officer. The squad obeyed, cutting through the lesser soldiers with precision. But as Lyra moved through the smoke-filled chaos, she noticed something. A shift in the air. The Xy'rak were adapting faster than anticipated. Their leaders were organizing a counteroffensive, and their tactics were far more complex now. The brute force they had relied on earlier was gone. They were beginning to outthink her. Lyra gritted her teeth. "I knew it," she thought. "They're not just soldiers. They're thinkers, too." The realization sparked a new determination in her. She had to outthink them back. "Squad, change of plan," Lyra barked. "We're splitting up. Stay mobile. Use the rocks for cover. We'll draw them out one by one. Don't let them surround you." Rook's voice came through the comms, hesitant but trusting. "Got it. Keep moving." Lyra's mind raced as she scanned the battlefield. The Xy'rak commanders had begun coordinating their troops with deadly efficiency. But they were still blind to one critical flaw: they were assuming they were the superior tacticians. And that was where they were wrong. Without hesitation, Lyra sprinted toward the edge of the canyon, vaulting over a rock formation to reach a vantage point. From here, she could see the entire alien advance. The Xy'rak were positioning themselves into a tight formation, preparing to flank her team. "Now!" Lyra shouted, her voice crackling through the comms. "Target the rear." With a sudden surge, her squad burst from their positions, using the rocks for cover as they peppered the alien forces with fire. The Xy'rak commanders, thinking they had the advantage, were caught off guard. The rear of their formation crumbled as Lyra's team moved with deadly precision, striking fast and then disappearing into the rocky terrain. For a moment, the Xy'rak faltered. Lyra knew they were recalculating their strategy. But she wasn't about to give them time to regroup. "Keep them guessing, keep them on the run," she ordered, charging into the fray. Her squad didn't hesitate. They were a well-oiled machine, a unit that thrived under pressure. But even they couldn't hold off the entire Xy'rak assault forever. The battle was wearing them down, and the Xy'rak weren't giving up. They were relentless. Lyra ducked behind a boulder, catching her breath. Her rifle was nearly out of power cells, and her armor showed signs of damage. But she wasn't finished yet. The Xy'rak had failed to break her squad's will, but they hadn't lost. Not yet. She needed one more push, something they wouldn't expect. Lyra turned to face the team's communications officer, Private Liss, who had been working tirelessly to maintain the squad's comms. "Liss, I need the electromagnetic pulse generator," Lyra said, her voice firm. Liss looked up, surprised. "You're planning on using it now?" "It's our only shot. The EMP will disable their tech. It's our best chance to break their command structure." With a nod, Liss set to work. The pulse generator, though heavy, was a last resort weapon. The Xy'rak relied heavily on their advanced technology. Disable that, and their cohesion would crumble. As the generator powered up, Lyra could feel the tension in the air. It was now or never. "Set it off," Lyra commanded. The EMP pulse erupted in a brilliant burst of light, followed by a deafening silence. The Xy'rak immediately lost their coordination. Their weapon systems went down, and their communication network collapsed. The moment was brief, but in that instant, Lyra's team moved decisively, cutting down the disoriented invaders one by one. Lyra stood tall, her breath steady despite the exhaustion creeping into her bones. This is just the beginning. They won't expect us to fight like this. And in the wreckage of a fallen Xy'rak assault, Lyra knew one thing: humanity had just delivered the first blow. And the battle for Aetheris was far from over. The sky over Aetheris was a canvas of deep, violent red, the remnants of a battle-drenched day fading into the inky black of night. The smell of smoke and burnt earth was thick in the air as Lyra Hargrove crouched low, her eyes locked on the advancing Xy'rak forces. The EMP had bought them time, precious time. But as the second wave of enemies marched toward her position, it became clear that the tide was turning. Lyra's fingers brushed against the worn surface of her rifle, the weapon now a part of her. She could feel every crack and imperfection, every scar on the barrel as if they were her own. It was a reminder of all they had endured, and all that was yet to come. "Status?" she asked over the comms, her voice sharp and steady, masking the tension in her chest. "We're holding strong, Lyra," Rook replied, his voice steady but with a trace of weariness. "But they're coming in faster than we anticipated. We need a miracle." There were no miracles here. Only human ingenuity, resilience, and sheer will. "Everyone, fall back to the central point," Lyra commanded, her eyes flicking over the terrain. "We're going to make our stand there. Don't give them an inch." She didn't need to look at her squad to know they would follow without hesitation. They were trained for this. They had been through hell together. Each one of them knew their role, and they trusted Lyra's leadership with their lives. As her team regrouped, Lyra took a moment to survey the battlefield. The Xy'rak had taken heavy losses, but they were relentless. Their numbers seemed endless, and each new squad they faced was smarter, more organized. It was clear, the invaders were adapting to her tactics. But Lyra was done running. If they wanted Aetheris, they'd have to take it from her. Suddenly, a massive roar shook the ground. Lyra's eyes snapped to the left, where a towering Xy'rak war machine appeared from the smoke. It was a colossal creature, nearly 10 meters tall, with thick armor plating and a pulsating core at its center. It wasn't just a soldier, it was a weapon of mass destruction. And it was headed straight for them. The rest of the squad quickly acknowledged the threat, raising their weapons to fire, but Lyra knew the odds. The war machine was too powerful. They couldn't beat it with guns alone. "Rook, Lys, on me," she barked, her voice already shifting to a new gear. "We need to disable that thing before it levels this position." "Understood," Rook replied, his voice grim. "But that thing's not going down easy." Lyra nodded. She didn't need words to know the danger they faced. She trusted Rook's judgment. But they had no choice but to fight. The Xy'rak war machine took aim, its colossal cannon charging with a low hum. The ground vibrated beneath Lyra's feet as the cannon fired. The blast hit the ground a few meters away, sending dust and debris flying, but the squad had already scattered. Lyra and Rook took cover behind a rocky outcrop, while Lys, ever the tech expert, began working with the squad's EMP disruptor. "We've got one shot at this," Lyra said, scanning the war machine's movements. "Lys, I need you to hit it now, before it can charge again." Lys adjusted her gear, her face set with focus. She activated the pulse, sending a wave of electromagnetic interference into the war machine. For a brief moment, the Xy'rak's weapon systems flickered and shut down, the cannon's charge dissipating. "Now!" Lyra shouted. Rook and Lyra leaped into action, sprinting toward the war machine while it struggled to reboot. With a well-aimed shot, Lyra hit one of the machine's legs, causing it to stagger. Rook fired next, targeting the glowing core in the center. But the creature wasn't done yet. It swung its massive claw toward them, a swift motion that sent Lyra diving to the side. Rook wasn't as lucky. The massive claw slammed into his side, sending him flying across the battlefield, his armor sparking on impact. "Rook!" Lyra screamed, her heart sinking. But there was no time to mourn. The war machine was recharging, its movements slow but deliberate. If they didn't act now, they'd all be dead. Lyra's mind raced. She needed to outmaneuver it, but the odds were stacked against them. She thought of every battle, every strategy she had learned. Then, the solution hit her. Lys, get to the far side of the machine. Lyra ordered. I need that core exposed, now. Lys nodded, darting to the opposite side of the war machine. As she moved into position, Lyra turned back to the Xy'rak machine. With all her might, she fired another shot into its leg, causing it to stagger again. The creature's massive head turned toward her, its glowing eyes locking onto Lyra's position. But it was too late. Lys activated another pulse, and the machine's core momentarily short-circuited, exposing its weak point. Lyra saw the opening and charged. Her final shot rang out, a perfectly timed blast aimed directly at the exposed core. The explosion that followed sent a shockwave through the ground, and the war machine collapsed, its massive form crumpling to the ground in a heap of smoldering wreckage. For a moment, there was silence. Lyra's breath was ragged, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had done it. The war machine was down. But the battle wasn't over. Rook stumbled to his feet, his armor scorched but intact. Hell of a shot, Lyra, he grinned, though his voice was strained. Lyra gave him a brief nod, not taking her eyes off the battlefield. We're not done yet. There's still more coming. She turned to her squad, her voice unwavering. Move out, people. We've got one final push. Let's finish this. The Xy'rak had underestimated them. They had thought that sheer numbers and firepower would crush humanity's will. But they were wrong. The battle for Aetheris had shown them something they hadn't accounted for, the resilience of the human spirit. As the squad moved forward, Lyra's heart raced, but she knew the truth. They had already won. The Xy'rak had underestimated their power, and now, they would pay the price. The final stand had begun. And Lyra Hargrove was ready to lead her team to victory.